When it comes to your network today, you have an awful lot of different classes of devices, and you've got a lot of different network media that's going to be used to connect all of these devices. From the classic Ethernet cable to the newfangled radio frequency that's carrying your wireless data. In this particular live lesson, we're going to explore the wonderful, wacky world of network media. We'll discuss some of the classics and some of the most important technologies for connecting your devices that you have today, and we'll look at some of the stranger ones. The bottom line is, if you're interested in having a good sense for how your modern network infrastructure is going to be connected, this live lesson is for you. If you want to engage in computer networking, you need to be well versed in networking media. We cannot communicate between machines without some type of media being between these network devices. Don't always think that you can physically see the media either. In the last video in this series, we talked about wireless. And in this particular case, we can't see the media that we're using for networking with the human eye. It's because the media is this radio frequency that's going through the air that we can't see. In this particular section on various networking media, we'll take a look at those that we can physically see. A great example is those network interface cards. Notice on the right we have one for a wireless infrastructure, and notice we can see its physical antenna that is going to be added to the device in order to pick up the receipt and the interpretation of those radio waves that are going through the air at a certain radio frequency. On the left-hand side, we can see a network interface card that's being inserted inside a machine, and notice it gives two options for physical media connectivity. Both of those options deal with the most famous aspect of networking media, and that is Ethernet. Invented in 1973 at Xerox, in 1995 we had an evolution of its speed capabilities with fast Ethernet. In 1998, another huge evolution of Ethernet's capabilities at a gigabit per second speed. And then in 2002, another revolutionary enhancement, and that was 10 gigabit per second Ethernet capabilities. So this is a mature technology that just gets faster and faster and faster as time progresses. A common connector for our fast Ethernet these days is a registered jack 45. And here we can see the RJ45 clear plastic casing, which enables you to see the twisted pairs of wires that are inside that particular casing. By the way, this looks a lot like an RJ11 jack for the plain old telephone system, but notice the RJ45 is much bigger. This will not fit into the wall jack for a telephone by any means. Something else that's interesting about our Ethernet cabling is that the RJ45 jack tends to be clear plastic like this. Why is that? Well, it's so you can hold up each end and look inside the ends to make sure that the coloring matches. Ah, yes. What we're checking here is whether the Ethernet cable is what's called a straight-through cable, where the color scheme will match on each end of the wire, or whether it is a crossover type of Ethernet cable where several of these wires will not match the other end. The crossover type of cable is so that devices that are identical in nature on the network can communicate directly with each other. The straight-through cable is for unlike devices to be able to communicate. So here we can see an example of the crossover cable, where the coloring scheme is not going to match as you look at each end of the cable. Remember, the crossover cable is for connecting those devices that are identical in function. For instance, if you want to connect a router to a router, it's a crossover cable. A switch to a switch, it's a crossover cable. A personal computer to a router, well, believe it or not, it's a crossover cable. Why? Because a personal computer can act as a router. So sure enough, it is a crossover cable that's needed. A straight-through cable is for connecting our unlike devices. Perfect example would be when we take our switch and connect it to a router, we use a straight-through cable. When we take our PC and connect it to a switch, we use our straight-through cable. Now, understand that a lot of network devices can catch up with new technologies and new media. Maybe you have an old router that was just capable of speaking Ethernet before. But sure enough, inserting this gigabit interface converter, now your device can speak gigabit per second Ethernet. So we will see a variety of devices now sold so that we can take advantage of the latest advancements in networking media. Understand, folks, that a lot of times you'll need to do your homework and investigate exactly what type of cable you need, exactly what interface you need on your device to take that type of cable. These shown here are just some of the serial cables that you might be called upon to use in a wide area networking environment with Cisco networking equipment. So, we really have to do our homework when it comes to networking media. Have we purchased the right physical media for the job? And do we have the right interface to connect that physical media? Again, this is an important aspect of networking. Oh yeah, and don't forget, the type of media that we can't see are wireless networking media today.